And we are finally back into the groove here. I was driving myself quite mad with trying to utilize all of the YouTube accessories, and apparently, thanks to Barrett illuminating me on the fact that I didn't need the accessories, we have managed to restore continuity to our discussions. How are you this morning, Barrett?
I'm doing good, really good. Yeah. I'm really enjoying just life and this day. Um, I find that I don't know, I've really held a strong intention that life is fun and always kind of supportive and nurturing, and life has been showing up for me that way lately, and yeah, I'm just having a good time.
Well, and you're becoming quite a gadabout. You were over in California, stumbling around in the desert with a bunch of hippie type yoga people. That must have been a great adventure.
It was. I may have been one of the only people wearing a polo shirt at the event, but I think it's definitely my tribe, and a lot of fun, a lot of really good people, open hearts, and people who really want to make progress on their healing path. And in my mind, these are the people that are the most dedicated to awakening. And I think you and I both get that that we're really wanting to know our deepest truth as soon as we can and as quickly as we're on our way.
That is very true. And in the journey, trying to do the least amount of damage because, boy, things in the non-real world that we are inhabiting right now are getting very aggressive. There's a lot of people out there that are not doing nice things to each other. And so I think it's important for those of us who are working on making that journey to a higher plateau manifest, that we, look at those issues and nothingize them. Don't even resist them. Just discount them as having no power, and realize that all of humanity out there is me. It's all one soul, and we've got to really put a lot of intention into covering those scars and binding those wounds and feeding those who are hungry, and providing all of the resources for humankind on its journey back to oneness.
And we are on our way. I think it's really helpful to get that everyone has this ability to choose peace, and that choice is right now. There might be a lot of people in our world that we can see are not choosing peace, but that doesn't mean that that choice is not available to them. And I think it's really helpful to see this because it really underlines our choice, and that's what's the most important here, is really coming to see what our choice is right now. And that even as the world gets crazy, even as people are doing hurtful or vicious things, that there is a way for us to be with all of that and to not feel upset, to not feel like something wrong has been done to us. I was just reading a section in the text of the Course this morning that says, "Beware of the temptation to perceive yourself unfairly treated." And boy, that's a temptation. And this world will show us that we are unfairly treated. But we come to see that it's only one possible perspective, and that we don't have to choose it in our life. We don't have to believe that we're a victim. Feeds right into that other workbook lesson: I am not a victim of the world I see.
That is very true. And in actuality, when we really are diligent in our journey, in our process, we eventually come to a point where we comprehend that everything everybody around us is saying is part of a script, and it was a script that we wrote. So all of the people that are meanies out there, it's like some people are going off on Hillary, some people are going off on Donald, How can they say this? What are, what's the meaning behind this? It's all a script, and you really have to step out of that tendency to take it personally and to believe that that person who is the Christ actually is coming from their soul with those thoughts. It's strictly a masquerade. It is the presence of the ego, and we created that ego and wrote that script. And that's where it really gets to be, a headbanger. That's the headbanger part of doing work with A Course in Miracles.
Are you saying we should all be like headbanging? Is that what you're saying, Chris?
Yeah, I think we should turn this into a global rave, and we'll get to 200 stout people, and I'll throw myself into the crowd and get talked to. That could be quite dynamic and exciting.
And this world definitely is exciting, but I think you really hit the nail on the head with that point, Chris, that when we get that we made all this up, we can't simultaneously be upset by it. So this is kind of an important point that is not always easy to digest, but it was really helpful that if we're the one writing a book of tragedy, and we write all the characters, and we write all the sad things that happen to them, it doesn't really make sense for us to feel bad about what happens to these characters. Now, that almost seems a little inhumane when we're still in the perspective of one of the characters. But our goal is ultimately to shift our perspective from being a figure in the dream, from being a dream character, to being the dreamer of the dream. And just like when we wake up from a dream that we were having in bed last night, we realized that there wasn't really anything to be upset about, even if we were being chased down a narrow hallway or something kind of scary. We're like, oh wait, that wasn't real. And we will have that shift of perspective around what is happening here, even around the intensities of the 2016 presidential election.
Yeah, I think that this has been actually an astonishing period of revelation for those of us who are committed to doing the work, because 25 years ago, to have witnessed what is going on in the political arena, you would have walked away saying, oh, that's a fantasy. That's somebody just showed me a movie. That's not real. And here we are in the midst of it, and it would have seemed to be that we are living through it. Mm. And we have got a script that is going in the direction of nobody's telling the truth. Nobody's being upfront. Nobody's doing what they say they're going to do. The heroes are becoming villains. The villains are becoming heroes. And it's like, damn, this means that we are at the crossroads. We are at that point where we can either dive into it and try to become a crusader for light and good, and try to fight for justice in the material world, or actually do the real work and step back and say, good God, what a stupid script. Let's trash this one and start rewriting something a little bit better.
Yeah, exactly. And as we realize that we're the writer of the script, sometimes the script gets better, other times it doesn't. But in both cases, we feel better. Like, we're not as upset by the vicissitudes. I think that's the word. It's a pretty good one. The ups and downs of the story and the viciousness that can sometimes happen here. So it is a high bar to set, but I think it's one that's really helpful to remember as our goal. And it does feed right in, picking up where we left off on our last call. We're going to be talking about the first section of chapter 28. This section is called The Present Memory. And on paragraph 7, there's a great line here. He says, "Remember nothing that you taught yourself, for you were badly taught." Oh, oops, I did it again. "And who would keep a senseless lesson in his mind when he can learn and preserve a better one?" When ancient memories of hate appear, remember that their cause is gone. So we can even see these ancient memories of hate as what is unfolding around us. When we watch the news and we see the latest murder or the latest bomb going off, we can see that this is really just a mad dream. And it doesn't mean we don't act kindly. It doesn't mean that we don't help out if we're called to help out in some way. But we can help out from a perspective of seeing what is true. And it really changes the way that we interact. Another analogy I like to share in this vein is like, if you had two firefighters and one was extremely upset and emotional and distraught about the fire, and another who was very kind of clear-eyed and calm, which firefighter do you think would do a better job of putting the fire out? It's the one who is calm and who is centered. And we can find that calm in every storm that we go through so that we can be as helpful as possible, but also kind of coming out of the fire, not singed by the fire, not threatened by the smoke, to really be in this world but not of it.
Yeah, one of the things that I have observed, and I think everybody who has any kind of a sense of spiritual awakening going on in their consciousness is aware of, is that when you like go on Facebook and do a rant about how you just had, somebody kill your dog and you ran out of gas on the freeway and life sucks, by splattering that around, that makes it more real. That intensifies it. And in the worst sense of what you're doing, as a negative contribution, is that you're planting those images in the minds of everybody that you're in dialogue with, everybody who passes by and looks at the page that you're creating. So it really is a very, very necessary thing to do the work inside. Don't go around and just broadcast all of this fear and loathing and nastiness and ugliness, because what you're doing is you're encouraging everybody around you to believe in it and to have to be afraid of it and to have to take steps to avoid it. And, and basically you're kind of pushing them off that ledge so that they're having to do a little bit more work than they normally would. And so we really have to become very self-aware when we are in discussion, when we are in public, when we are circulating through the different circles of society that we inhabit, that we're putting out a thought that is affirmative. And if we're looking at the negative, we're able to laugh at it and dismiss it. People understand, oh, this isn't something that's a threat. We can laugh at these ugly things and move beyond them and step into healing. So it really becomes a very personal part of your journey as to how you react to all these different circumstances and what you end up doing that is part of the collective healing.
Yeah. And I think just another facet of that is really taking responsibility for what we're going through. The idea of being a victim means that someone has done this to us. And as we're coming into being responsible for it, I'm not saying that it's, the individual self, the individual mind that chose this, but it did happen on a higher level of mind. And as we come to realize that it was us who chose this, it means that we can't ever really be upset by the world around us again. And obviously that is kind of a thing that takes time to achieve. We need to kind of keep honoring our emotions. And as Chris has just said, we need to do the inner work around our upsets and our feelings and our emotions. But to realize that we don't need to be crouching down in the sandbox. There's an analogy that Ken Wapnick used to use, that that when we're feeling upset by the things in the world, it's like we're an adult in a sandbox, and we're crouching down, and maybe some of the kids in the sandbox are kicking sand in our face. And all we really need to do, we don't need to fix the things in the sandbox. We just stand up. You know, an adult standing in a sandbox, maybe the kids are still throwing sand around. It's like, okay, well, whatever. It doesn't really affect me. And we start to have this perspective as we go through our life of, yeah, maybe I don't want to be crouching in the sandbox anymore. It's time for me to stand up and have that higher perspective over what's happening. So this is really about us going from spiritual immaturity into spiritual adulthood. And over in the Course, Jesus refers to us as infants, as babies, as his children, and he knows that we have some learning to do. But I think to realize that's where we're going, that helps us as we're going through the stuff in our sandbox.
Yes, and one of the things that you really have to pay attention to is your cat in the sandbox with you, because you're going to find little nuggets of reality that you're going to have to stop and address. So, and as we skip down in the same section a little bit further down, there's kind of a fun thought here in section 10 or paragraph 10 that I go back to over and over again. It's, you who have sought to lay judgment on your own Creator cannot understand it is not he who has laid a judgment on our Son. So, I hear people over and over and over again saying, God sent a tornado as a wake-up call, and we all need to join in and punish the people who are failing to understand that God is very unhappy with us, and so he's sending storms and pestilence and plague and all this stuff. And it's like, no. If you are that simplistic yet, you are at the threshold of learning how very untrue that is, simply by taking that next step of awakening and realizing, if I was created in the image and likeness of God, I would be as omnipotent as God is. So how does that factor into the whole idea of victimhood? And how does that factor into the idea of a God who is hell-bent on punishment and revenge? And of course, it completely disassembles all of those arguments. And it places us in proper perspective to our Creator. The only distinction is that God was the first in the process, the first thought, the first action. But he did not withhold anything of himself from us. So he created us exactly as he is. And the only time that we're a victim is when we are allowing ourselves to victimize ourselves. And that really gets real dark real fast.
Yeah. And I think we all at some point, as we're doing our healing work, have to address this false image of God. This image of God as vengeful, wrathful, kind of out to get us, basically. Certain traditions exalt this idea that we're supposed to fear God, and that you're a good follower of our path if you're afraid of God. But obviously that's not the teaching of the Course, and it's not the truth of what God is. God is formless. God is eternal love. God is that state of oneness that we will come to awaken to. But on top of that perfect peace, we've laid over this image of God. And it's the God of the Old Testament. It's the God who's going to throw his thunderbolts at us and smite us down for, transgressing the wrong law, or, taking the wrong land. Like God is like this person playing a big game of Risk or something, or chess, and we're all just the pieces on the board. And ultimately we have to kind of confront that image so that we can fully undo it. Even those of us who don't consciously have this idea of a vengeful God, we think God is love. We often still have an unconscious belief in this. Even as we get that God has nothing to do with this world, God doesn't have anything to do with death, we still cling to this idea that somehow God did this to me, and that I'm this poor miserable sinner that's not worthy of God's love. So we let these false ideas come up so that we can let them go. And that's really our path, is to explore our mind and to heal all of these conscious and unconscious thoughts that aren't in alignment with truth.
Very true. A few years back, there was a song that I was rather smitten with. What if God was one of us, just a slob like all of us? And, that's dragging God down to our level. But the truth is, we have to be willing to struggle a little bit and try to attain that higher level that God exists at, in that state of eternity, and giving up the silliness, the foolishness of the temporal life, the absurdity of the idea of death, the belief that we can be attacked and therefore we need to attack in order to defend. All of these things ultimately are going to have to be reviewed in a very, very personal way. And then you're going to have to let go of it all. And it will happen. Actually, in truth, it already has. It's just we're living out the memory of all this madness.
Yeah, this crazy rerun we call our life. But it's going to keep unfolding until we don't need it anymore. This world has one of two purposes. It's either to reinforce the idea of separation, or it is to undo it. And which purpose it has is up to us. And as we've been talking about today, if we're seeing the problems and the pains out there in the world as the cause of our upset, we are reinforcing the idea that I'm separate. I'm separate from someone else. I'm separate from that group of people. And ultimately, we're saying, when we say that we are separate from God. And when we get that we are really all one, we're all the same. Even on the level of form, we all have the ability to choose peace in this moment. Even the worst dictator or terrorist has that ability to choose peace and love, even if they're not choosing it almost all the time. That ability is there, and that ability is what makes us all the same. And when we can really see that, then the minor differences just start to fall away, and they don't matter anymore.
Yes, and we are collectively ready to take that next step. I do believe that that's why there is such a sense of crisis in the world right now, is because there's that fracturing that has to occur when you're inside the egg and trying to work your way out of it. You've got to break something. You've got to break the shell in order to escape. And I think perhaps that is what is in fact happening on a global level. But, well, Barrett, we've had a nice rejoining and reestablishing continuity in our discussions here. And I suppose we should wind it down for this week so that you can get off on your adventures and I can pursue some of mine.
That's right. Well, it's always good connecting with you, Chris. And speaking of adventures, this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I'm going to be doing reading and healing work at the Well Life Festival in Madison. That's WELLIFE, like smashed into one word. So feel free to check that out. And I'll be doing discounted sessions there. And yeah, there's always more coming up ahead. And I know Chris and I are also looking at doing another in-person event in Alsip sometime soon as well.
Yes, that's on the horizon in October, so stay tuned for that. And we do have one viewer who has taken the ride along here with us, which is kind of cool. So whoever that viewer is, we appreciate the fact that you were able to jump on board and observe the discussion, listen to the discussion. And we will be reconnecting in 1 week, and I'm sure you'll have some amazing stories to share with us, Barrett.
Yeah, there's always more stuff that's fun in the happy dream, and I think that's my goal for everyone is to help everyone be the happy dreamer, and to know that what's happening here doesn't have to take away your sense of peace.
Right, exactly. You know, I've heard that that lake there in Madison has a creature not dissimilar to Nessie. So maybe while you're up there this weekend, you'll be able to get a glimpse of the giant serpent living in the lake in Madison, Wisconsin.
Well, if it's like Nessie's cousin, but it's in Wisconsin, maybe its name is Bessie.
Probably, and it probably has a thing about cheese. So make sure you've got some cheese curds to take along and feed to
it. Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, you have a great week, Chris, and I'll talk to you next week.
Yes, you as well, Barry. Bye.
Bye.